It was the first day of the school year at Arcanum Academy, the most prestigious magical institution in the entire galaxy. Its spires reached high into the sky, bathed in the faint glow of a twin sunset, the air thick with the scent of old books, magical potions, and the unmistakable hum of arcane energy. This was a place where young minds honed their skills in spellcraft, alchemy, and ancient martial arts. But none of that mattered to Lieutenant Theo Grayson, standing at the gates of Arcanum, his sleek black power armor gleaming under the twin suns. He felt out of place. Not because he was human, though that was part of it, but because he was in full battle regalia while everyone else was either in robes or simple magical attire. The helmet of his power armor was sleek and dark, a smooth surface with glowing blue veins running through it, matching the energy coursing through the suit. He wasn't here to learn magic, he was here to keep an eye on the situation. He was human, one of the last few representatives of his species, and he wasn't about to let some magical students or creatures decide the fate of Earth. Beside him stood his companion, Andromeda, an AI embedded within the suit's systems. Her voice was calm, synthetic yet somehow reassuring. "You're going to be fine, Lieutenant. Just follow the protocol. Stay low, stay alert." Theo couldn't help but scoff. Stay low? In this thing? He gestured to his towering armor. "I'll be the tallest thing in this whole school." Andromeda didn't respond immediately, though Theo imagined the AI was rolling her virtual eyes. "Just don't draw attention. Blend in. Stay inconspicuous." "Right," Theo muttered. Inconspicuous. As if that were even possible. He was a 6'5" human in a fully armored battle suit, standing at the gates of the most magical academy in the universe. He was hardly the definition of inconspicuous. As the massive gates opened, the sound of students chatting and laughing filled the air. They were all around him, elves, dwarfs, telepathic beings, and others, all adorned in robes, flowing garments, or carrying magical implements. The variety was staggering. Theo couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with weariness. This was the heart of magical education, and here he was, an outsider. Worse, he was under strict orders from the Council of Galactic Defense to ensure that no threats from his home planet, Earth, were introduced into this peaceful, magical environment. They'd heard whispers of a conspiracy, and now it was Theo's job to track it down. "Hey, you there!" A sharp voice cut through the crowd, pulling Theo from his thoughts. He turned to find a young woman, no older than 18, her long silver hair trailing behind her like a comet's tail. She was wearing a simple robe, a wand strapped to her side. Her golden eyes studied him with both curiosity and confusion. Theo straightened his back. "Yes? You're not one of the usual students, are you?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "That's some serious armor you're wearing." Theo gave her a curt nod. "I'm not a student, no. I'm here on official business." The girl's eyes widened slightly. "Official business? Here?" She looked at the imposing suit of power armor. "You look like you're here to fight an army, not attend classes." Theo forced a tight smile. "Let's just say I'm here to make sure nothing unusual happens." The girl blinked, clearly unsure how to respond. She tilted her head, taking in the sight of him. "I've never seen anyone dressed like that before." "Are you from one of the military academies, then?" "Something like that," Theo replied, trying to keep the conversation brief. He didn't want to draw any more attention to himself. "Not here, not now." The girl's expression softened, and she smiled. "Well, welcome to Arcanum. I'm Lyra, by the way. If you ever need directions or—" "I'm good," Theo interrupted, stepping past her. He didn't have time for pleasantries. There was work to be done. But Lyra wasn't deterred. "I'll be around if you change your mind," she called after him. Theo gritted his teeth, trying to ignore the feeling of eyes following him as he walked through the main courtyard. It wasn't just Lyra. Every student seemed to be staring at him. And why wouldn't they? His armor was designed for combat, with energy shields, thrusters for high-speed mobility, and enough weaponry to level a city block. None of the students, none of the staff, could possibly understand why someone like him would be here in the middle of their sacred school. The courtyard was bustling with life. Creatures and beings from across the stars were everywhere, practicing magic, chatting with friends, or rushing off to their next class. He had a few minutes before he was expected in the main office, so Theo decided to take a walk. Maybe he could learn something, or at least find something useful for his mission. As he wandered deeper into the academy, the buildings grew more ornate and ancient. The architecture was something out of a fantasy novel: spiraling towers, floating platforms, and halls lined with enchanted glass that shimmered with arcane energy. There was a certain beauty to it all, and despite himself, Theo found himself admiring the design. But that wasn't why he was here. He was here because of the rumors. Whispers that there was a secret faction within the academy, one that might be working with off-world forces, possibly even from his own home planet, Earth. The last thing Theo wanted was for anyone to find out about humanity's plans. If that got out, the entire galaxy could be in danger. He wasn't going to let Earth's last hope become a pawn in someone else's game. Still, as he walked, it was hard to shake the feeling that something was off. The air was thick with power, magical energy that crackled like static, but there was something else lurking beneath the surface. A sense of unease. A quiet whisper of danger that Theo couldn't quite place. His comm unit crackled to life, snapping him from his thoughts. "Lieutenant Grayson," Andromeda's voice echoed through his helmet. "I'm picking up unusual energy readings near your location. There's something going on here, and it's not just magical." Theo paused, his instincts kicking in. He scanned the area, looking for any sign of trouble, but the courtyard seemed peaceful. Too peaceful. "Any specifics?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. "I can't pinpoint it exactly, but it's not magic-based," Andromeda continued. "It's almost like a distortion. Stay alert." Theo's fingers hovered over the control panel on his forearm, ready to activate his suit's defensive systems. Whatever this was, he had a bad feeling about it. He turned and began to make his way toward the main building, his mind racing. The students around him didn't seem to notice anything unusual. They were busy with their conversations, casting spells, and practicing their magic. But Theo had learned long ago to trust his instincts. If there was one thing his power armor didn't just enhance, it was his gut. And right now, his gut was telling him that something was very wrong. He made his way toward the center of the campus, where the administration building loomed ahead. Its marble facade gleamed under the twin suns, but Theo knew better than to trust appearances. The building held more secrets than anyone cared to admit. As he entered the massive doors, a sharp chill ran down his spine. Something was about to happen. Something big. And Theo Grayson, for all his strength and technology, was about to find out just how out of place he truly was. Theo entered the administration building with a cautious pace, his armor's sensors scanning every corner, every doorway. He had expected grandeur, but there was something far more unsettling about the building up close. The marble floors were polished to a sheen, reflecting the shimmering light of enchanted chandeliers hanging high above. But the moment he stepped inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that the air was too still. There were no voices, no students rushing to classes, no magical energy swirling about as it had been outside. It felt unnatural. Andromeda's voice filled his helmet again. "The energy readings are getting stronger, Lieutenant. They're coming from deep within the building." "I can see that," Theo muttered, his hand resting on the hilt of the energy blade at his side, ready for any threat that might present itself. His movements were deliberate, cautious, as he approached the grand staircase leading up to the upper levels. The stairwell was long, spiraling upwards with ornate banisters carved from what looked like ancient wood, glowing faintly with a blue hue. It was a far cry from the sterile, militarized halls he was used to. But that's not what concerned him. It was the unnatural stillness that had his mind racing. There should be guards. There should be staff. Yet there was nothing. With each step, the sense of unease grew heavier. He made it halfway up the staircase before he heard it, a low hum, almost imperceptible but unmistakable, like the thrum of a machine. He froze. The noise was coming from above. "Something's not right," Theo whispered, his gloved hand reaching for the energy sword on his back. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew whatever was up there wasn't good. "Proceed with caution, Lieutenant," Andromeda warned. "The source of the distortion is only a few floors above you." As he reached the top of the stairs, Theo pushed open a set of large wooden doors. The noise intensified, and his helmet's sensors went wild, unable to get a clear reading. It was like a distortion, a break in the very fabric of reality. And it was coming from a massive chamber at the end of the hallway. The room was cavernous, filled with shelves of ancient tomes, magical artifacts, and symbols that Theo didn't understand. But it wasn't the room that caught his attention, it was what was at its center. In the middle of the chamber, floating in midair, was an intricate device, humming and pulsing with an unnatural energy. Theo approached cautiously, his boots making only the slightest sound on the marble floors. As he got closer, the air grew colder, and he felt an odd pressure in his chest, as if the very atmosphere around him was pushing back. "What the hell is that thing?" Theo muttered under his breath. "It's an energy conduit," Andromeda's voice explained. "But it's not like any conduit I've ever seen. The energy readings are off the charts. This is no ordinary magic." Before Theo could respond, a loud crack echoed through the room, followed by a flash of light. He instinctively raised his shield as the room seemed to tremble. A figure appeared from thin air, standing in front of the device. It was a tall, shadowy figure, its features hidden beneath a hooded cloak. Theo's heart raced. This was no student or professor. This was someone, or something, far more dangerous. The figure's eyes glowed with an eerie purple light, and its voice, when it spoke, was like the rasp of dry leaves. "You shouldn't be here, human." Theo's grip tightened around the hilt of his sword, his stance ready for a fight. "I'm not here for your games. What is this device, and what are you doing with it?" The figure chuckled, the sound echoing unnervingly through the chamber. "You think you understand, don't you? But you're not even close. This academy has long been a sanctuary for magic, but there are those who believe the power here should be used for more than just teaching. It should be used to control." Theo's eyes narrowed. "Control? Control over what?" The figure raised one gloved hand, pointing to the device at the center of the room. "Over everything." The hum of the device grew louder, the distortion in the air becoming more pronounced. Theo could feel the energy in the room intensifying, and his armor was struggling to compensate for the overload. Whatever this was, it was powerful, and it was quickly spinning out of control. "You're making a mistake," Theo said, his voice calm despite the rising tension. "You don't know what you're dealing with." The figure didn't respond, but with a swift motion, it raised its hand, sending a shock wave of magical energy toward Theo. He barely had time to react, but his suit's defensive systems kicked in, creating a barrier just in time to absorb the brunt of the blast. The force still pushed him back, slamming him into a bookshelf. Books and scrolls tumbled to the floor with a loud crash. His helmet's visor flickered with static as his systems recalibrated. But before he could regain his bearings, the figure was upon him, moving with supernatural speed. The air crackled as the figure raised its hand again, summoning a bolt of pure energy. Theo, still recovering from the blast, acted on instinct. He deployed his suit's thrusters, launching himself into the air and over the figure's attack. The air around him vibrated as the blast struck the floor where he had been moments before. He landed with a heavy thud, taking a moment to assess his situation. His energy shield was still active, but it was draining fast. He wasn't sure how long it would hold up against this kind of assault. "You're persistent, human," the figure spat, stepping toward him, its cloak swirling ominously. "But you're out of your depth." Theo didn't respond. Instead, he used his thrusters again, this time to propel himself toward the device at the center of the room. If he could destroy it, he might stop whatever plan this figure had in mind. But the figure was faster. Before Theo could reach the device, the figure's hand shot out, grabbing him by the throat and lifting him off the ground. The pressure on his neck was immense, and for a moment, Theo thought the suit's systems might not be able to withstand it. "I'm afraid it's too late for you," the figure hissed. "This is bigger than you or your armor. You can't stop what's coming." Theo's mind raced as he struggled for air. He needed a plan, and fast. His thoughts darted back to the rumors he'd heard on Earth, the whispers of a dark magical force working in secret, manipulating events to gain ultimate control over the galaxy. He couldn't let it happen. Not here. Not now. With his last ounce of strength, Theo activated his suit's emergency override, launching a pulse of anti-magic energy directly into the figure's chest. The figure screamed, releasing Theo as it staggered back, its hand clutching its chest where the energy had struck. Theo gasped for air, but he knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The figure staggered back, the pulse of anti-magic energy disrupting its form and sending ripples through the very air around them. For a moment, Theo thought he had gained the upper hand, but the figure was far from defeated. It stood upright, the shadows of its cloak swirling ominously, and the eerie glow in its eyes intensified. The air in the room was thick, charged with an unrelenting energy that Theo could feel pressing against his chest, suffocating him. This wasn't just magic, it was something ancient, something far older than the spells and charms he was used to. "You are persistent," the figure said, its voice now cold, its words dripping with disdain. "But persistence won't save you." Theo's mind raced as the figure raised both hands. The air around him trembled, and the walls of the room seemed to close in. The force from the device had heightened, and the energy was no longer just a disturbance, it was alive, a sentient presence that was weaving itself into the fabric of reality itself. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just a rogue magician. It was a threat unlike anything Theo had ever encountered. The figure flung its arms outward, and the floor beneath Theo cracked open, fissures racing across the marble. He barely had time to react as chunks of stone and debris shot up toward him, propelled by an invisible force. His suit's thrusters kicked in, just in time to dodge a massive stone pillar that flew toward him, narrowly missing his head. The impact of the explosion sent him spiraling backward, but the suit's systems compensated, cushioning his fall and keeping him on his feet. The figure seemed to draw strength from the device now, the dark energy swirling around them like a storm. "I've waited too long for this moment, human," the figure hissed. "Your kind never understood the power we wield, the power we could control. This academy was meant to be the final key to unlock it." Theo took a deep breath, his helmet's systems bringing up a readout of his suit's energy levels. His shield was weakening, his thrusters were close to depleting, and his anti-magic pulse, his last trump card, had exhausted a significant portion of his energy reserves. He didn't have much time left, and this figure seemed intent on making sure he never left the room alive. "Whatever your plan is," Theo growled, his fingers tightening around the hilt of his energy blade, "it's not going to work." The figure's laugh was like gravel scraping together, cold and unforgiving. "You think you can stop it? This magic, this power, it is beyond your comprehension. Even your suit is useless against it." Theo didn't answer. He couldn't afford to waste time on threats. The figure had shown it could manipulate the very environment around them, but it had also made one crucial mistake. It was too focused on Theo, too arrogant to realize that its power wasn't limitless. The device, it was drawing energy from something far more dangerous, something that had to be the source of the distortion. If Theo could just shut it down, he could end this madness. Taking a deep breath, Theo charged. The thrusters in his suit flared as he sprinted toward the center of the room, his energy sword drawn, its blade crackling with electric power. The figure tried to intercept him, raising its hands to summon more dark energy, but Theo was faster. With a fluid motion, he used the thrusters to leap over the figure's attack, coming down behind it in a flash of motion. The figure's eyes widened in surprise as Theo slashed down with the energy blade, the weapon cutting through the air with a sharp hum. The figure attempted to block, but Theo's blade was designed to cut through almost anything, including magical barriers. It struck true, the glowing blade carving a deep wound through the figure's cloak, sending a surge of energy pulsing through the room. For a moment, the figure staggered, its dark energy flickering, unstable. The room itself seemed to react to the injury, the walls groaning as if something ancient was being disturbed. The power in the room was cracking, fracturing. Theo could sense it, the pressure lifting ever so slightly. Impossible, the figure gasped, its voice now strained. It reached up, clutching at the wound, but the magic swirling around it only seemed to intensify, feeding off its pain. You have no idea what you've done." Theo didn't give the figure a chance to finish. He advanced again, his energy blade flashing as he sliced through the air, trying to dismantle the figure's defenses. The dark figure seemed to be losing control of its power, the distortion growing more erratic, more unstable. If Theo didn't act quickly, the whole room, and possibly the academy, could come down around them. The figure's hands trembled as it tried to summon another attack, but Theo was faster. With a swift strike, he cleaved through the figure's raised arm, sending a shockwave of magic and energy splintering across the room. The figure shrieked, the sound reverberating off the walls, but it wasn't enough to stop Theo. The suit's energy reserves were low, but he wasn't going to stop until he had finished this. He darted forward, planting his blade into the ground and using his thrusters to propel himself toward the device in the center of the room. He had to destroy it, now. The figure screamed, the dark energy flaring up around it. "You fool! You don't understand." But Theo didn't wait to hear the rest. With one final burst of energy, he drove his sword into the heart of the device. The blade cut through layers of arcane machinery and magical constructs. There was a brief moment of stillness, and then the entire room erupted in light. A wave of energy surged through the chamber, knocking Theo to the ground and sending shockwaves through the building. His armor's systems were overloaded, sparks flying from the circuits as his shield finally failed. He fought to keep his consciousness, but everything was spinning, the walls of the room distorting before him. The last thing he saw before his vision went black was the figure, its form shattering, disintegrating into nothingness. The power was gone. The world around Theo faded to black. For a moment, there was nothing, no sound, no movement, just an overwhelming silence that pressed in on him from all sides. Then, gradually, the familiar hum of his power armor's systems flickered back to life, pulling him from the darkness. His vision slowly cleared, the display on his helmet recalibrating as he took in the ruins of the room. The once imposing chamber was now a wreck, marble chunks and broken glass scattered across the floor, the shelves of ancient books and artifacts reduced to little more than rubble. The device at the center of the room, the source of the distortion, had been utterly destroyed, its dark energy evaporating into nothingness. A brief ripple of magic hung in the air before it dissipated entirely. Theo groaned, struggling to his feet. His energy reserves were depleted, and the suit's systems were damaged, sparking and hissing as he limped toward the center of the room. His movements were slow, deliberate, but every step felt like a victory. And yet, the weight of what had just happened settled heavily on him. He had stopped the immediate threat, but the damage to the academy, to the very fabric of reality itself, couldn't be ignored. The distortion had been something far worse than a simple magical attack. It was an infection, an anomaly that sought to unravel everything it touched. The figure, whoever they had been only a piece of a larger puzzle. But Theo couldn't focus on that now. He had done what he had to do. He had won, but at a cost. "Lieutenant Grayson, report," Andromeda's voice crackled through the helmet's comm, and for the first time in what felt like hours, Theo allowed himself a small, relieved sigh. "I'm still here," he replied, his voice low, tired. "The device is destroyed. The figure's gone." "Good," Andromeda said. "I'm picking up some faint life signs, but it looks like the area is safe for now. You've contained the threat." Theo nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "Safe? For now, maybe. But this place," he looked around at the devastation. "This academy wasn't just a school. It was a symbol. What if this wasn't the only attempt? What if there's more?" Andromeda was silent for a moment. "We'll need to investigate further. But for now, Lieutenant, you did what you had to do." Theo's gaze shifted back to the ruins of the room. The stillness of the academy weighed on him, the echoes of ancient power lingering in the air like a faint memory. His mind wandered back to the students and faculty he had seen earlier, their magical potential, their innocence, their unaware role in this larger galactic conflict. They had no idea the danger they were facing. And, for now, that was the only good thing about this mission. He had stopped something terrible, yes. But he had done so at the cost of everything this academy represented. If word of this event got out, if the wrong people found out how close they had come to disaster, then the peace the academy provided could unravel. It wasn't just Earth that was at risk anymore. The galaxy itself was a volatile place, and factions far more dangerous than the one Theo had just encountered were always lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting. A soft noise broke his thoughts. He turned toward the doorway, and to his surprise, a figure stepped into the room. It was Lyra, the girl he had briefly spoken with outside. She looked much the same as she had before, her golden eyes wide with curiosity, though there was now a spark of recognition in her gaze as she saw the destruction in the room. "What happened?" she asked, her voice tinged with fear. She looked around at the wreckage, her eyes scanning the devastation. I felt something, a huge burst of energy." "Is everyone?" "The academy's safe," Theo interrupted, his voice firm. "The threat's been neutralized." Lyra took a hesitant step closer. "Neutralized?" she echoed, glancing warily at the remains of the dark magic that still lingered in the air. "What do you mean?" Theo took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. There was an attempt to harness forbidden magic, dark magic. A power that could have destroyed everything here. Lyra looked as though she might say something more, but Theo's gaze hardened. "Listen, this stays between us. The fewer people who know about this, the better. This wasn't something anyone here could have stopped, not alone, at least." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable, before nodding slowly. "I understand," she said quietly. "But, why are you here? You don't belong here. This isn't your world." Theo hesitated, his eyes shifting from the ruins of the room to her face. "I'm not from around here, no," he said, his voice softening just a fraction. "But I'm here because Earth, my home, is facing threats you don't understand. This academy, its role in the galaxy, it's bigger than any one person. I couldn't let something destroy it." Lyra nodded, her eyes softening with a mix of sympathy and understanding. "We may be different," she said, "but the things we protect, our homes, our worlds, our lives, are what we all fight for." Theo looked down at his armored hand, the suit still radiating faint pulses of energy. He had fought hard, using everything at his disposal to stop a threat that was not his own. But in that moment, standing there in the wreckage of the academy, Theo realized something he hadn't considered before. It wasn't just about protecting Earth, or any one world. It was about the fight for survival itself, against any force, any threat, no matter how magical or technological. The future of the galaxy depended on those who were willing to stand up, to fight back, to protect the peace that so many had worked so hard to build. And for that, Theo had done what was necessary. He had won. "Thank you," Lyra said quietly, breaking the silence once more. "For saving us all." Theo gave her a slight nod, his expression softening. "It's what I do." The two of them stood there for a while in the silence that followed, the distant hum of magic and life slowly returning to the academy. The weight of the battle had passed, but Theo knew that the fight was far from over. As long as there were those who sought to destroy the peace, the galaxy would always need protectors. And, for better or worse, he was one of them. With a final glance at Lyra, Theo turned and made his way toward the exit, the sound of his armored boots echoing through the hallway. And as he walked, he couldn't help but smile. For the first time since arriving on this strange world, he felt like he belonged.